Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Pilot Lawyer Podcast. Thank you for your attention while this important legal information is reviewed. What you hear should not replace consultation with an attorney and should not be considered advice for your situation. On behalf of the Pilot Lawyer and your entire crew, it's our pleasure to have you aboard.
Welcome, aviators, to the Pilot Lawyer Podcast with us, the Ison Brothers at the Ison Law Firm, where aviation law is all we do, nothing else. You're here for what we do best, navigating the FAA medical certification process for pilots and those who want to become pilots. Around the office, we say, if you don't laugh, you cry. And for the next 30 minutes, we hope to bring you the lighter side of what can otherwise be a frustrating process. So whether you're laughing at us or with us, join us brothers as we discuss the fascinating world of FAA medical certification. Did I read that correctly?
I remember the first time we did. It literally took us 45 minutes to get a
then we
decent take
used to
on
call
that.
each other the big cheese, and you were Bozo.
So, yeah.
I forget what I was.
Here's something interesting. I was walking down
Somewhat of an anomaly.
Yeah, you got a name for yourself. I was walking down the salad dressing aisle at the Publix because we're fine Southern gentlemen. And then we got the Publix. Just walking down the salad dressing aisle, and who comes?
You don't look like you eat salads.
I use it as
the dressing.
Use it as a well, that's a good point. I'm looking at the dressings,
Yeah, sure.
and who pops out off the aisle at me? None other than the great silver screen actor, Mr. Paul Newman, in his classical salad dressings.
Interesting tidbit
I'm trying to give you an interesting tidbit. Don't cut me off. Paul Newman wanted to be a pilot, but he couldn't because he was colorblind.
That sounds like a great topic for a podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Just imagine the salad dressings we'd be missing out on. Caesar, spicy Caesar.
Who's to say that he wouldn't have still been a pilot?
Well, he didn't call us because you can still become a pilot if
Dropping his dressing from up high.
dropping like leaflets.
Yes.
Try my salad dressing.
Now open your mouth. I'm gonna. No.
So on that topic, can you get a medical if you have a history of colorblindness? Colorblindness? What is it? Colorblind?
If I have a history of a colorblind,
That's just one eye of colorblind.
I'm colorblind.
Can you get a medical if you're colorblind?
Sure, but you're going to have to jump through some hoops. And here's where we're going to talk about some nuance. So we have a blog. It's entitled FAA Color Vision Standards. And I don't know that we really talk about the standards per se in the article or the blog, but we do talk about what you have to do if you don't meet the testing that will be administered to you relative to your ability to see color appropriately. And so what that looks like, I start this blog by saying that it's a complicated process.
Is it as complicated as the cardiac?
It's pretty complicated, I think.
It's a very colorful picture on this.
Yeah,
but
right,
what I'm on this blog, but it's a beautiful eye with all sorts of colors.
Yeah.
The whole rainbow. But what
got a
I'm
real
more
eye for
interested in here, though, is
What are those little yellow specks?
what are these little specks on the... What is that
This
white
person
part of the eye?
has jaundice, and
I don't know.
clearly a substance use problem.
Okay, anyhow.
So check out the blog and you'll see what we're talking about. All of this to be said. What's going to happen if you're colorblind?
I think it's going to depend on what type medical you're seeking.
That's right. So when you apply for a first, second, or third class medical certificate, your AME is going to administer a color vision examination. Upon examination, the AME is going to be required to administer one of a series of a few color vision instruments. So we've talked to AMEs before, and what I have found is they use the one that's most inexpensive.
If there's one of us to find something, it'll be Anthony.
That's right. I find it like a truffle
You found the
pig,
dressing
like a
aisle.
truffle pig. So,
What's the point of...
well, they've got a variety of instruments that they can use, and the AME has discretion of what they're going to have in their office.
Well, what's the big concern though? As far, I mean, that might sound kind of like a dumb question, like who cares if you're colorblind and flying? But I mean, maybe for those that are getting into this for the first time and
Sure.
they're dismayed to see, I got to go through this. I mean, I can drive a car, right?
Yeah. I guess
Maybe.
you can.
I mean,
you got here to work somehow today.
No, but you know what I'm
let me
saying?
give you an example. If you're familiar with Emiliano Sala,
Oh, yes.
Oh,
if
yeah.
you're familiar with him, he
Best
apparently
friends.
was unfortunately some sort of sports
Sports-
star. Some sort of
sports
sports
car.
star. Sports star. You're wrong.
Never heard of him.
He's a sports. The guy's dead now. Show some respect.
Well, that's...
Emiliano's.
Well, how did he die?
Well, I'm about to tell you.
Was it...
Oh, he's a footballer. Okay, he's a soccer player, I guess. Oh, there's apparently quite a following. Anyhow, this individual was in a plane crash. And it was found that the pilot flew too fast and lost control while trying to avoid bad weather.
Was he the pilot?
He was not the pilot.
Oh.
But the interesting thing is that there was some nuance there. There's some argument that maybe there was some carbon monoxide poisoning, but it was ultimately found that the pilot that was flying him was not licensed, quote unquote, to fly at night. Now, this is over in the Europe. So it's not the Europe. So it's not FAA standards, but
What was the year?
Rigorous.
the year
standards.
was approximately 2019, the year of our Lord. So all of this to be said, there's articles out here about how this pilot was not authorized to be flying at night. Like Icarus flying too close to the sun, he flew too close to the darkness, and
Too close to
unfortunately
the storm cell.
did not end well for him. So the reason I provide that anecdote, is it an anecdote when someone dies? This
think it's
story.
just a story.
It's not the funny part of the podcast, that's for sure.
No, it's sad.
Morbid.
But that being said, it is something that can contribute to accidents, and Lord have mercy, the attorneys will crawl all over that if you're in an accident and they come to find out you were colorblind or somehow your vision standards
Medically
were deficient. So all of that to be said, you know, what happens with your AME as far as the examination of your color vision at the time of examination, you know, if you don't do well there with your AME, there's opportunities to fix that, but that is a consideration that might be taken into account from a liability standpoint.
I guess what I was kind of getting at was what is it in the operation of an aircraft where having a colorblind deficiency would impact your ability to safely operate.
I mean,
the
how would
aircraft.
I know? I'm not,
You're a pilot, aren't you?
I just talk about the content. Okay.
Well, there's a whole section here in the blog. I'm trying to cue you up.
Well,
For crying out
I
loud.
haven't
Listen, I'll
gotten
read
to
it.
that
I'll
part.
read it. I'll tell you what.
Poor
Here,
Q.
let
Poor
me
Q.
answer my own question. How about the ability to read and correctly interpret instruments and displays in a timely manner?
Sure.
Perhaps the ability to recognize terrain and obstructions in a timely manner. Or the ability to visually identify the location, color, and significance of aeronautical lights, including other aircraft, runway lights, and et cetera.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that's all a consideration. Well, you're getting ahead of us. So
What difference does it
let's
make?
say-
I'm trying
well,
to-
Well, when you get to your AME's office and you fail at your AME's office, this doesn't make any difference. The question there is whether or not you can pass their dumb little test.
Maybe you should know before you go in there if you're getting colorblind.
You're trying to condense the article into like 2 sentences.
We
and
got
it's more
30 minutes here.
It's more complicated than that.
Okay.
So you go to your AME and you take their dumb little test, right? So there are some tests that the FAA won't allow you to take. If you go to your AME and this is the only test they have, walk out of there because the FAA is going to follow up with you and say, why were you taking this test? And those tests include the Optic 5000 vision tester, the color vision portion, the Farnsworth lantern flashlight. So if he brings out a flashlight and shining it around, that's a problem.
The Wilson lantern flashlight will work though.
Yeah. I don't know what that means.
Farnsworth, I'm trying to, last name for, whatever, never mind.
The Revere.
I don't know what you guys are. Yarn tests.
Like Paul Revere.
The lantern. Okay. Yarn tests. So if he brings out a bunch of yarn and says, what color is this yarn? It's a problem.
got problems.
I'm not a cat.
Lord help you if the AME's also colorblind.
No, I'm really asking, what color is this?
I'm knitting a sweater. I don't know what it is.
That's right.
Okay.
And the last one is, and this is the best one. The FAA puts this in their policy. AME administered aviation signal light gun test. So if your AME whips out a light gun from the that they have in the tower and says, "What color do you see?"
That one there seems like that should not
well,
be.
it's because the FAA's got these incredible standards as at what distance you should be able to see them at, and so on and so forth. So it's not, hey, I'm standing 10 feet away from you.
So red at 5 feet is that the same as red at 500 feet?
Yeah, apparently not.
Okay.
So if you fail one of these tests at the AME's office, you can request to take an alternate test. So in our blog here, and you can also find it on the interweb, that there is a series of tests that are available. So if you don't do well with the AME test, you can do another one. And if you fail that one, though, the AME can still issue a medical certificate if you're otherwise qualified with limitations stating not valid for night flying or by color vision signal control. So essentially, if you get your medical certificate, that's great, but you're limited to flying during the day and by no color vision signal control. So just hope that you don't lose your radio. So what happens if you fail everything? Let's say you go in there you fail everything and your AME puts that limitation on your medical certificate and it prevents you from being able to fly at night or by color vision signal control. What is there to do? What is there to do? Well, I'll tell you what there is to do because you guys clearly don't know.
Well, obviously.
So if you fail that test, you can go take what's known as the operational color vision test.
Where do you take that at?
You take that test at the Flight Standards District Office, FSDO. So in order to complete the OCVT, there are certain things you'll have to do with an aviation safety inspector at the FSDO with the Office of Aerospace Medicine's permission. You can't just walk into the FSDO and say, hey, listen, I want to do this. You have to get authorization from the Office of Aerospace Medicine to take this. But nevertheless, if you successfully complete the OCVT, the FAA will issue to you what's known as a letter of evidence and will remove that color vision limitation on your medical certificate. So on the OCVT, what you have to do is a signal light test during the day. So this is a situation where the airman is required to identify aviation red, green, and white via light gun signal at a specified distance. Now, there are certain standards that in the FAA's handbook for aviation safety inspectors that essentially requires that these light gun signals be at a certain distance and so on and so forth. A quick anecdote. We had a case once where this individual was essentially tested and he failed. Now, the thing about the OCVT is that you can only take it once, and that's it.
It's like a one and done?
It's a one and done. If you don't pass it, tough McGuires. So what happened was...
Those are the toughest.
McGuire. You don't want to mess with someone named McGuire. Trust me. So what happened was that this guy failed and wouldn't take no for an answer. And so he was a McGuire probably.
He was a fighter.
Right? And so he had this idea, essentially, that, hey, I'm going to hire a surveying company. And I'm going to have them, I remember where because they went outside to do it. It was kind of weird. Like this aviation safety inspector found a park for them to go do this at, because there's something to do with snow drifts, and they couldn't do it there at the FSDO. And they hired a survey company.
This wasn't up to standards.
And said, hey, listen, this guy was standing a lot further away. So we were able to take that evidence, go back to the FAA and say, hey, listen, I'm sorry, but your aviation safety inspector was standing too close to the school here. I mean, he was in this park that, he shouldn't have been at.
He's closer to the sun.
Yeah, like Icarus. So all that being said, yes, it's a one-time ordeal, but I've seen certain cases where you can kind of make an argument to say, hey, they screwed this up, and I was put at a disadvantage.
Has your FAA medical certificate been denied? Are you concerned you may not be able to get a medical certificate from the FAA? Are you at risk for FAA action for failing to report your medical history appropriately? Call the pilot lawyer at 1-855-FAA-1215 to discuss your options for getting the FAA to issue your medical certificate and get you flying. We are happy to evaluate your case and discuss with you a plan for presenting your case to the AME or the FAA. Aviation law is all we do, nothing else.
Hey, this is a relevant question. If you do the light gun test with your AME, and you fail it there, what says, what's saying that you're going to...
You're not supposed to do the
Passive.
light gun test with your AME. That's one of the things that is specifically prohibited.
Oh, unacceptable. Okay, I phased out during that portion.
Yeah, you're a little monotonous. Let me ask you this, though. Would it be improper, though, for you to go into your AME having already done this, if you know you're colorblind, right? To maybe see if this is going to be an issue for you down the road?
So knowing that you're colorblind.
You know you're colorblind.
And you go into your AME and you fail. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm saying you haven't even gone to your AME yet.
I see.
You're maybe trying to be proactive.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I would definitely go and practice this, is what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go and can't do this with your flight instructor, what makes you think you're going to suddenly be able to do it with ASI?
Because if you go in and you submit an application and you get deferred or denied because of a history of being colorblind and you're not able to pass these standards.
But you're not going to be denied. You're going to get the limitation.
So you can still fly if you're colorblind.
During the day.
And that's the only limitation?
Time of the day where there's colors.
Yeah, but seriously. I mean, I guess what I
just said, the limitation is not valid for night flying or by color vision signal control.
Okay. So you will get a medical of some sort.
Yes, you'll have that limitation. So you'll only be able to fly through the day.
Will you get a first or second class medical?
Yes, you can.
Even if you're colorblind?
We're about to get there.
Yes.
Okay. Well, listen, I'm just trying to speed this up a little bit.
Well, here's the thing. On this OCVT, you go take the signal light test. Okay, you fail that, great. Here's a piece of candy. But you're also going to have to do aeronautical chart reading. Now, this is where you're required to read and correctly evaluate an aeronautical chart within a timely manner, right? So the FSDO is going to want you to identify terrain, typefaces, font size, and so on and so forth. Here's the thing, though. If you're going to practice this one, you should get an old chart from about, 1992, crumple it up, burn it, drive it over with your mom's van, throw it off a cliff, roll it in some dirt, have your dog eat it, and then vomit it up. Then practice with that chart. There's no way, son, that they're going to be giving you a brand new chart to look at. So keep that in mind. That's often a complaint we hear, or at least I hear. I don't know what you guys are doing, but there's a complaint that, hey, I couldn't read this. This was an old rusty map. Well, get used to it. So that's the OCVT. If you go and pass that for a third class medical, you're golden. You're golden. You don't have to have that limitation that Christopher just learned about. Now, if you're a first or second class medical certificate applicator, if you're applying for a first or second class medical application, here's the deal. You're going to have to do that OCVT still. Sorry. So do everything we just said. But then, on top of it, you're doing a medical flight test at the FSDO. So that's where you get into a plane with the aviation safety inspector. I said aviation safety expector, but he's going to be expecting a lot from you. So.
The inspector will inspect. The inspector will inspect.
The inspector
Either
will.
way.
Yeah. Inspect and inspect the inspector. Didn't work.
Okay.
Anyhow,
whatever.
so you can expect during a medical flight test for an in-flight testing to include what Christopher was so eager to identify: your ability to read and correctly interpret instruments and displays in a timely manner, right? They're not going to give you 20 minutes to say, hey, I think I found the altimeter. You're going to have to...
That seems like an issue of reading.
Yeah,
really.
you have to come up with that one pretty quick. Ability to recognize terrain and obstructions in a timely manner. So you don't want to be coming up with, hey, there's a mountain.
There's a dog on the runway.
There was a dog on the runway.
I saw a wolf once.
On the runway or just in general?
Up in Leesburg when I flew in there.
Oh, yeah.
It might have been, it probably wasn't a wolf, probably like a coyote.
Yeah.
Coyote.
Yikes. So then an ability to visually identify the location, color, and significance of aeronautical lights, including other aircraft, runways, etc., in a timely manner, right? So you got to be able to say, hey, I'm landing on the runway, not the taxiway. So what is the good news? What good news is it?
Well,
Jesus Christ is our Lord and Savior.
Well, that's the eternal news.
but it seems kind of weird, though, that like first and second class medical, they care suddenly about you being able to read and interpret the instruments, but not on a third.
You're going to be carrying passengers.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, you're going to be carrying passengers on a third.
Well, you're not. They're not paying passengers, so they get what they pay for.
I mean, you could theoretically fly a 737 on a third class medical if no passengers in it, of course.
Yeah.
for
hire.
compensation or hire. But my point is,
I don't know. I don't write the rules. I just facilitate them.
you just enforce them.
Yeah. So if you've passed the OCVT, you'll be granted a letter of evidence for third-class privileges only, right? So that means that, hey, that's great. I can go fly a third class at night, whatever I want. If you pass the OCVT and the medical flight test, you'll be issued a letter of evidence for all classes of FAA medical certification. That means you don't have to deal with this nonsense every 2 seconds. It's kind of like they just accept that you can see at night and so on. What's the bad news, though? Well, you can only take the OCVT once, like I said. Now, just be careful to make sure that you're thinking about what's happening during the process so that you can later dispute any potential issues if, in the event you fail the OCVT, because it's a one-and-done situation.
Not advocating that you try and create some reason to dispute it.
No. Well, that's why I gave the anecdote.
I know.
If you're standing 2 miles
we're not
away.
giving people the idea that they should somehow stand further away.
Yeah,
so
don't sabotage yourself.
Slowly move back.
Because our experience in that one case may not
That's
necessarily
very
work.
unusual.
May not work as a defense in any other case ever again.
It's very unusual.
But that was just an anecdote.
It was just an anecdote. So I told you that, listener, John Q. listener, just for the mere fact that
Mother.
I'm telling you this, Mom, because
pay attention to what's going on.
Yeah, pay attention to what's going on.
Because you might need to recall that later on to defend why you failed.
That's right.
But don't go out there and try and find a reason to fail.
This was a fluke. And we had to go to the extent of hiring a surveying company to go and measure this distance, which is not something that's always going to be successful.
Is this something that this is probably going to be found out at the AME's physical, right?
Were you listening? Well, you don't do this until such time that you failed with the AME.
I'm just saying, like, this isn't something where somebody would not put this down on the 8500 and then become.
He's trying to go to amendment corner, okay?
Yeah,
okay.
It's time for amendment corner.
In theory, if you have vision trouble, with the exception of glasses, and you know you have a diagnosis of color vision, in theory, that should be put down on the question relative to
18D
vision problems.
Or is it 8E?
Well, I'll tell you exactly what it is. Would you like to know as I pull it up frantically?
I think it's D. 18D is vision.
You think?
I believe so.
Get the glasses.
18, the glasses. Let's see. 18, drum roll. It is D. Eye or vision trouble except glasses. Now that's
E
where
is allergies, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. 18D Delta is eye or vision trouble except glasses. Now, vision trouble. I always have a hard time. I have trouble with trouble. What is trouble? Is color vision trouble? Like if
troubling to the FAA.
Is it troubling? Like. Yeah. So there's something to be said for reporting at 18D. Yeah. Well,
in your life, but
I don't have color vision.
No, I'm saying
you don't have color vision,
the general applicant, you.
Sure. I really think this episode is going to turn some people off. I don't think they like us.
Just as long as they turn off the episode.
You're not helping yourself.
Whatever.
So, establishing a general understanding of your color vision status before you go to your AME, as you had previously noted, is a good idea because if you fail the test with your AME, you're looking into this limitation issue. Now, here's something that's interesting. If you know what kind of test your AME uses, we'll hear this a lot where, I can't go to this AME because he uses the, such and such test. Whereas, this AME uses such a test, says, I know I do well with this type of test and so on. So that is something that I think in practice we see quite a bit where people are kind of going to the AME, they know they do well with a particular color vision test. So keep that in mind.
So you mentioned this once before, though. Like, if you go through all the OCVT steps, you're never going to have to go through all that again if you pass it, right?
That's right. For a third class. But you also have to take the medical flight test for first or second. Then you'll never have to do that again.
All right. And
you get a letter of evidence.
A letter of evidence. So, I guess it can't be a change in circumstance with respect to the color blindness, right?
No. Unless you...
Develop
Alex, you got anything to say?
No, either you got it or you don't.
Okay. So once you get the letter of evidence,
I don't think if my color vision got any better that you'd be any prettier.
I'm seeing red right now.
So again, I would say prepare as much as you possibly can for the OCVT or the medical flight test with a flight instructor or the friend when it comes to the sectional chart review and so on and so forth. I just think the practicing and to make sure that you're ready for that test is important. Beyond that, I don't know that there's much to add. I think it's an important thing to consider how it's going to go at your AME, which AME to go to, and to maybe even avoid the limitation of itself. But again, you might not need that letter of evidence if you continue to pass your color vision test every time. So
here's an interesting thought.
Oh, boy.
Here's a question. Like, let's say you fail the OCVT test or OCVT, right? You get the medical. Can you go to basic med?
I don't see why not. I don't
If
see
you go
why
on
not.
a basic med, though, is there a limitation? Because you would have a limitation on like a third class, right?
Yeah, I don't think you'd have a problem.
So you this
You
is
could
all
ostensibly-
theoretical.
Yeah, don't do what we say.
This is just us talking here. So could you go to basic med then and then expand your horizons in terms of operation to a certain extent with regards to what the limitations would have been on your third class?
Perhaps, but then you're going to end up like Emiliano Salo, the footballer whose pilot wasn't supposed to be flying at night.
Yeah, so it may not be.
You might end up.
I guess they're
more of a
still
hurt.
operating during a no medical deficiency.
As possible.
So-
6153.
Yeah, so maybe if you try that end round, maybe you shouldn't because you still have the 6153
But
considerations.
then again, it's not a medical deficiency under the basic med rules, which something that could be a medical deficiency under first, second, or third class may not be a medical deficiency under basic med in theory. You know what I mean? Because you could have, I could have gotten a third class, and then I could have been struck down with a severe case of anxiety, which in theory might prevent me from getting a first, second, or third class. Go to basic med, and no problemo.
I guess 6153 is that individual flight, right? The self-assessment for that individual
that's
flight. It's
right.
not just
That's
like
right.
perpetuity, but interesting stuff.
Yeah, we really.
That's why it's fascinating.
We went from being silly-ish,
Yeah.
to serious-ish.
Flippant
And then
non-flippant.
if they had turned off the podcast
They
before
wouldn't
they
have
got to that part,
this is the best content right here. So
hey, they're
Beautiful
lost.
content. Huge.
You know,
Beautiful.
All right.
So okay, I think I can. Oh, what's that?
Do what?
What are those? What are those blue lights down there?
Oh, that's the end of the runway. Didn't
You don't
see
know
that.
how it
I didn't
works.
see that coming.
You don't know how it works.
Taxiway?
Just go ahead. End it.
It's been a minute since I've been out there. So we have, I think, logged another uneventful half hour listening. We have.
We've had to hear
I
ourselves.
lost my spot
We've
here.
had
on
to-
this little-
we've had to
this
hear
little scrap of
ourselves
paper.
talk.
Anyhow, so here it is.
Please enlighten us. Are you just regular blind? It seems like.
All right. Well, you've logged another uneventful half hour listening to the Pilot Lawyer podcast. And I don't really have a witty little outro here. I'm not
We know.
I'm not gonna
It's okay. Just
narc
accept
on
it
the
and
wives.
move on.
Maybe they were colorblind the day they met us. But
No, regular
that-
blind.
anyhow, we're the Ison Brothers of the Ison Law Firm. We'll see you next time.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.